The Jacksonville Jaguars and the Cleveland Browns have more playoff wins than the Steelers do over the last 8 seasons. Does that mean it's time for Pittsburgh to blow it up and start all over again? What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. On this episode, we're going to be leading off with the Steelers' future. Do they need to reset? Do they need to rebuild, trade all of their best players, start over again? Does that also include moving on from Mike Tomlin? Now, if the Kansas City Chiefs win the Super Bowl this year, or if they come up short of three-peating, I believe this is going to be the last season for the next 8 years that we see the Chiefs make it this far in the playoffs, because the AFC West is catching up to this team, and nobody really is talking about it. The Indianapolis Colts with Anthony Richardson, man, they just look like they're at a point of no return with him. I do not see him developing. To me, he doesn't look like a natural quarterback. I have my approval ratings for first-year head coaches Raheem Morris and Dave Canales after their first seasons. And is Shedeur Sanders worth a top 10 pick? It's the nepotism, the only reason why he's getting mentioned in these conversations with some of the best players in this year's draft. Before we dive into it, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, make sure that you hit that bell icon so you don't miss when we drop new content. We're not just the YouTube channel, we are a podcast. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. The links are down in the description down below. Let's dive into it. It is being heavily suggested that the Pittsburgh Steelers, after falling short in the first round of the playoffs, once again under Mike Tomlin, they need to blow it up, start all over again, which includes trading away franchise cornerstones TJ Watt and Mika Fitzpatrick, along with George Pickens. I am strongly against this. Tanking in the NFL is not proven to work out. This is not the NBA. There are way more components that goes into rebuilding a team through the draft than what it does in the NBA. And with the Pittsburgh Steelers, your issue isn't that you can't put together a team that has the potential to win a Super Bowl. The problem is that you don't have good enough quarterback play to get past the first round of the playoffs. And when you have an offense that is wildly inefficient, your defense is going to be on the field for more plays than what they should, and they get gassed. Mike Tomlin continues to overachieve relative to the talent that the Steelers have produced on the field over these last couple of seasons. You can't put all of the Steelers' quarterback struggles on Mike Tomlin when you have a new general manager in Amar Khan, who's also part of the problem as well, but he doesn't get as much criticism because he's not in the spotlight as much as what Mike Tomlin is. Mike Tomlin isn't somebody that is incredibly involved in the personnel decisions. The Rooneys have a large hand in a lot of the decisions that have gone down. You know, and to put all of the Steelers' playoff shortcomings on Mike Tomlin, I feel is a little bit irresponsible, and it's wrong to him because this is a team effort, and the front office is also responsible for the Steelers' lack of postseason success just as much as what Mike Tomlin is. You see, Mike Tomlin, I don't think he was surprised how his team lost to the Baltimore Ravens with how brutally honest he was after the game. He just was truthful. He said that the Ravens were the better team. They were better coached, and they just had a complete bigger talent advantage than what we did. It wasn't that we didn't try, that we didn't give it our best. It's just that that's how better they were than us. And it definitely hurt him to say that, but he understands his situation. He hears the noise from the outside, and he probably is just as hard on himself as what we are. But the changes that he has made haven't worked out, but he's going to continue to make changes because it looks like he really is trying to do what it takes to get over the hump. But you got to get rid of Arthur Smith and Terrell Austin. Terrell Austin, look, if Dick LeBeau got fired, he should get fired as well. For the Steelers to have the NFL's highest paid defense, it never shows up when they're going up against any of the highest paid quarterbacks. Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, they normally always have really good games every time they play Pittsburgh. You know, anytime the Steelers see a remotely good quarterback, the defense always gets shredded. It's been this way since Tom Brady and Bill Belichick were down there in New England. Every time they played the Steelers defense, they were going up and down the field with ease. Mike Tomlin is the only coach that is considered by most to be an elite head coach in this league, and yet he has no coaching tree. All the good head coaches in this league have great coaching trees, because if you're a good head coach, you put the guys in position under you to elevate. And if you're not hiring good coordinators, you're not getting guys that any other team wants to hire, then that kind of shows a lot about your philosophy as a team. You know, people just want you, but you don't have the ability to hire the right guys beneath you with you being the CEO coach to help elevate this team. You know, I don't want to say he's a raw cheerleader guy, because he does make pretty serviceable adjustments in certain situations, but it's just, you know, with Mike Tomlin, man, just resetting and starting over and getting rid of him isn't the answer. The Steelers are not 5 or 4 years away from being contenders. That's what makes this frustrating. They just lack in two major components: a good offensive coordinator and stable quarterback play. Now, if you go with Justin Fields next year, I wouldn't be mad at it. Even though me personally, I want to be against seeing Aaron Rodgers. And I get why a lot of y'all don't like Aaron Rodgers, but he was serviceable for the New York Jets this past season. He was top 10 in passing touchdowns, and he still was relatively efficient. At least he can throw in the middle of the field. Sean Payton has been dumping on Russell Wilson ever since they got rid of him for a reason. He has been right about Russell Wilson. Kurt Herbstreit was critiquing his footwork in the pocket. He's just old, and his style of play isn't conducive to having success in the NFL anymore. Next season, he probably is going to be competing to be a starter. He most likely will end up being the backup by the end of this year. He doesn't have any juice anymore. Justin Fields, if Mike Tomlin really does go out bad again and the Steelers do move on from him at the end of next season, I wouldn't be against him putting his job on the line for Justin Fields, because he's been stressing he wants a quarterback with playmaking ability. Justin Fields has that. He's one of the best playmakers at the position in the league. The problem is he just hasn't been able to put it all together as a passer, but he's had a year to sit behind Russell Wilson. And the reason why I think if the Steelers go to Justin Fields as the starting quarterback next season, why they could potentially overachieve and he could thrive is, remember, Sam Darnold had a breakout season with Minnesota because he was in the right situation. Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, they've been able to resurrect their careers after going to not so good situations. The Chicago Bears, for the last couple of decades, have been the place where quarterbacks' careers go to die. Look what they've done for Caleb Williams. Absolutely nothing. Justin Fields, and a better culture and organization in Pittsburgh under Mike Tomlin, there is the potential that maybe he can actually be able to unleash the untapped potential and that consistency that we never saw out of Justin Fields when he was the starting quarterback for the Chicago Bears. So I wouldn't be against rolling the dice on Justin Fields. Hey, Mike Tomlin always produces winning seasons. So if you can win with random quarterbacks like Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph and Russell Wilson and Duck Hodges, remember him, the duck caller? Mike Tomlin, if he can start off with 9 wins with Justin Fields, when Justin Fields has one of those games when he just completely goes off, maybe we could see a Justin Fields redemption arc this season. I'm not counting it out, but he really is their only best option outside of Aaron Rodgers, if you want to go in that direction. But there's no reason for the Pittsburgh Steelers to blow up a team that consistently makes it to the playoffs. Regardless of what the Chiefs do at the end of this season, rather if they make it to the Super Bowl and three-peat or if they don't, This is going to be their last year being as dominant as what they have been over this last near decade, because the AFC West is catching up to the Chiefs and nobody's talking about it. There are too many good coaches in this conference for the Chiefs to continue to sustain this level of dominance. You have Jim Harbaugh, who's a top 5 football coach just overall. The dude has won at the college ranks, and he still dominates at the NFL level. You guys forget, his first 3 seasons in San Francisco, he took them to the conference championship game every single year, and they went to a Super Bowl. Jim Harbaugh also turned around his alma mater, Michigan. The dude just knows how to win. And for the Chargers to have been as good as what they were this season, with the cap situation they had, having a lot of their key guys being a little bit older on defense, and having nobody but Lad McConkey to throw to at receiver, you know, Jim Harbaugh was probably the best head coach in the league when we talk about his circumstance, being able to do more with less. He deserves to win Coach of the Year. Imagine how good this team is going to be and how far they're going to go when they finally are able to use some of that cap space to improve that roster. Now, what about the Denver Broncos with Sean Payton and Bo Nix? They look very promising. Sean Payton is a good head coach, too. People got mad at him because he kicked Russell Wilson to the curb, but in hindsight, when you look back at it, he was right. Russell Wilson probably is going to be out of the league in the next year or so, or backup at best. Meanwhile, you have Bo Nix, who shocked everybody. There were not a lot of people who were high on the Denver Broncos when they made the decision to draft Bo Nix, but him and Sean Payton proved a lot of people wrong. And they also, like the Chargers, had a really bad cap situation due to the dead cap hit that they took for getting rid of Russell Wilson. So for the Denver Broncos and the Chargers to have overachieved the way they have this past season, it just shows you how promising the futures of both of these franchises look as they continue to add on more roster talent with already good quarterback play. And if the Raiders hire Ben Johnson, you know, who probably is one of the best head coaching candidates in the last 6-7 years that we've seen, then this could be arguably the toughest division in the NFL. But you already have 2 really good coaches. Andy Reid is the best head coach in the league, but the gap between him, Jim Harbaugh, and Sean Payton is not that wide. You know, Sean Payton has won a Super Bowl before. Jim Harbaugh has been to a Super Bowl before, and he's only missed the playoffs only 1 year as a head coach in the NFL. I do not see the Chiefs being able to maintain the level of dominance that they have once this season is over. What gets overlooked about the Patriots dynasty is that one thing that they always had that was consistent, that factored into them being able to be so good, was that they were always benefiting going up against teams in their division that had no good quarterbacks and always were rotating out different head coaches. The AFC West is completely different. You have 2 other coaches that are proven. Not as proven as Andy Reid, but they definitely are capable now that they have franchise quarterbacks. The AFC West has caught up to Kansas City. And if they don't three-peat this year, this is going to be their last opportunity for the next 8 years or so until they get back to the Super Bowl. Or if they even get back to the conference championship game, because they've been to this game every single year that Mahomes has been the starter. But let's not act like Tom Brady and the Patriots were always winning the Super Bowl every year. Let's not act like they didn't have years when they lost in the divisional round of the playoffs. I don't see the Chiefs being able to maintain this level of dominance over the league for the foreseeable future with the emergence of the other teams in their division. Things are not looking good for the Indianapolis Colts right now. They are at a point of no return with Anthony Richardson. Look, when you drafted him in the first round a few years ago, you understood that this was not going to be one of those situations where you were going to see overnight success. You were playing the long-term game with Anthony Richardson. Well, now we're going into his 3rd season. Not only has he showed signs of regression because he looked worse this past season than what he was during his rookie season. But also, you got a brother that's 6'4", 255 pounds and is injury prone. You have all that size for nothing because he struggles to stay on the field. He was unable to go in their regular season finale because he had some back spasms that were so bad that he had to crawl around to get around his house. You know, he had one of the lowest completion percentages that we have seen out of a starting quarterback in the last 10 years since Tim Tebow, which Tim Tebow is like Anthony Richardson, but a lot more juiced up. Or Anthony Richardson is Tim Tebow, but a lot more juiced up. You know, Tim Tebow, he was able to win more games than what Anthony Richardson was because he had a better defense and a better coaching staff, but man, after his second season, being the starter, he got swapped out for Peyton Manning. He was never able to really find success again in the league. And for Anthony Richardson, when you watch him play, he looks a lot like Tim Tebow. He just doesn't look like a natural quarterback. I know people that have played against Anthony Richardson in high school and said that he didn't look like he was worth the hype. You know, yeah, he's a uber athletic quarterback, but would you be wrong to move him to tight end if he doesn't pan out after this upcoming season? Would you be wrong to try him out at fullback? Would you be wrong to try him out at middle linebacker? Because some guys just aren't cut out to be NFL quarterbacks. Because when you're struggling to throw the short passes, the intermediate passes with consistent accuracy, and you're completing under 50% of your passes, that does not make you a starting caliber quarterback. And at this point, you know, if you're Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard, you know that your jobs are on the line. Do you really feel safe putting your livelihood on the shoulders of Anthony Richardson, who, once again, let me reiterate, has the lowest completion percentage of any starting quarterback that we've seen in this league over the past decade? If you were in their shoes, would you feel comfortable knowing that your job is in the hands of Anthony Richardson and the sake of potential? That's the thing about potential. You hope, you envision that he can become the next Josh Allen. But let's just be honest. Let's just be realistic. Over these last 2 years, how confident do you feel that Anthony Richardson is really going to reach his ceiling? Because it doesn't look good right now. Josh Allen, at least he was able to stay on the field. He showed signs of improvement. Anthony Richardson regressed, and he was never that good at Florida neither. He had the same problem at Florida that he's having in the NFL. I say this all the time. Sometimes it's not about letting the guy sit. Sometimes it's not about patience. Sometimes you just have guys that just are not ready to play quarterback at the NFL level. Some of you guys underestimate how hard it is to be an NFL quarterback. The preparation, the time that it takes to even be above average in this game, playing this position, is incredibly difficult. So for Anthony Richardson, there's so much that goes into this game. And with him being so young, you might have to wait 7-8 years before he looks like a solid quarterback. By that time, you're probably going to be burning through 2 or 3 different coaching staffs. Trey Lance was one of those examples that you had somebody that was inexperienced. You thought the potential was there. You thought if you sat him and you gave him time to learn and develop, he would be able to be an elite quarterback, but he just was a dud. And Anthony Richardson just might be a dud. I wouldn't be against them getting Aaron Rodgers. Let's talk about Raheem Morris' approval rating after his first season in Atlanta, which, let's just be honest, he really underachieved because coming into last season, the Atlanta Falcons were heavy favorites to win the NFC South, which is widely considered to be the weakest division in the NFL. They had a team that was perceived to already have a playoff squad in place, especially when you make the decision before the season to trade for Matt Judon and sign Justin Simmons. This was a team that expected to make it to the playoffs. They did not expect to start 6-3 and then falter to 2-6 down the stretch. You signed Kirk Cousins to a massive contract, and yet you have Raheem Morris who refuses to bench him. in spite of him leading the NFL in turnovers over that span when he ended up falling apart over the second half of this year. You know, Raheem Morris, with his clock management that costed them the game somewhat against the Washington Commanders, he should have gotten fired on the spot. We saw Matt Eberflus get fired after awful clock management like that. There are some guys who you just have to look at the signs early on and accept them and cut bait before you allow your young, promising quarterback and Michael Penix to have the first couple of years on a rookie deal ruined. The guy already is up there in age. You know, how many years does he have of being able to play high-level football in the NFL? You don't know, which is why you have to make sure that you have the best head coach possible. And I don't think that Raheem Morris is it. My approval rating for him is a whopping 47. Listen, he is supposed to be a defensive-minded coach, and yet the defense was the worst part of their team. There were so many games that they lost this year because the defense folded, especially the last couple of games, how they lost. They didn't even allow Michael Penix an opportunity to get on the field and win it for him against Washington. When you have a head coach who specializes in a particular area of the game, and that's the area that is the weakest on the team, that's a huge indicator that you don't have a good head coach. Raheem Morris has been a head coach before, and he failed. The only good thing that Raheem Morris has brought to Atlanta is offensive coordinator Zach Robinson, because he's done a great job of maximizing the young potential on that offense. You see Drake London, who had a breakout season. You also see Darnell Mooney, who had a really good season. Bijan Robinson broke out, and Michael Penix looked really good as well. The offense is stacked. Defensively, they suck because Raheem Morris has done a poor job of managing that side of the ball. To me, he looks like a CEO head coach. I just don't have a lot of confidence in Raheem Morris as the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, which is why I have a 47 approval rating on him. And I think going into next season, there's an argument. There's a strong case that he could be holding the title as the worst head coach in the NFL. Let's talk about Dave Canales' approval rating after his first season in Carolina. And look, I'm going to give him an approval rating of 85. This first season for Canales was not about the wins and the losses. It was about helping Bryce Young develop and show the potential that he has what it takes to be a serviceable starting quarterback in this league, and he was able to do that. This was the same person who helped resurrected the careers of Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield in back-to-back seasons, and it looks like he just has done it again. Dave Canales, he just might be the true definition of what it means to be a quarterback whisperer. He reminds me similarly of Bruce Arians, because Bruce Arians was able to do the same thing everywhere he went, where he was the offensive coordinator or the head coach. He elevated whoever the quarterback was. He went and had a lot of success in Arizona with Carson Palmer when people thought he was done, when his career was over. And Dave Canales has a lot of similarities to Bruce Arians in some capacity, with just how good he is at understanding how to get the most out of the quarterback position. Bryce Young now is called the Carolina Reaper for a reason. When you play Bryce Young, 100% guaranteed he's going to destroy your defense, and he just might get your head coach fired if your team is bad enough. Over Bryce Young's last 10 games, he has 15 touchdowns and only 6 interceptions. It looks like he truly understands it now. And depending on what the Carolina Panthers do this offseason, they could potentially position themselves to win the NFC South, because this is a division that's wide open. The Saints are in salary cap hell. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, look, just how long do you think Todd Bowles is going to continue to benefit off a weak division? And the Atlanta Falcons, They have a dud at a head coach right now in Raheem Morris. With Bryce Young ascending, if he can continue to get better in his third season and the Panthers have a really good offseason, they could position themselves to win this division in 2025 and make it to the playoffs. So my approval rating for Dave Canales after year one in Carolina is an 85. Shout out to my guy Michael M3. He writes in on X with the question for the show. He says, Ward has a chance to be special. I'm riding that train wherever it goes. Why do you think Shedeur will be franchise top 10 level QB? I'm interested to hear your thoughts. He looks small, mobility not great, arm not special, very sackable quarterback. I've never been so torn. The reason why Shedeur Sanders is worth a top 10 pick in the upcoming NFL draft is because he's the only safe quarterback that you can draft that you know that even if he doesn't reach his potential, he's guaranteed to be no worse than the top 10, 15 quarterback in this league. He has good accuracy, great ball placement, which is why his floor is incredibly high. His decision-making, his poise under pressure is why his ceiling, if he ends up reaching his potential, is the Black Joe Burrow. They have a similar skill set. He's a similar athlete to Joe Burrow. To any QB-needy team that drafts Shedeur, you will be getting a guaranteed starter for the next 10 to 15 years that you know is going to give you above-average quarterback play at his worst. He's the son to one of the greatest football players all time. He's seen his father's work ethic. He knows what it takes to be a star in this league. He knows what it takes to be great. His intangibles, you can call it nepotism all you want to, but it warrants being taken in the top 10. If you're a team that desperately needs a quarterback, you would be well served to roll the dice on drafting Shedeur Sanders. The risk is definitely justified. I don't see how he ends up being anything worse than the top 15 quarterback. That's what makes him a top 10 pick in this upcoming draft. If you are the Browns, the Raiders, the Giants, and you need stability at quarterback, that's what Shedeur Sanders is going to give you. When you take care of the football, when you stay poised under pressure, when you have good accuracy and ball placement, those are all areas of Shedeur's game that translate well to the next level. He does need to get better with anticipation, but a lot of his issues can be coached up. If he goes to the Raiders, if they hire Ben Johnson, he will be a great quarterback, offensive-minded coach. Brian Daboll went to the playoffs and won a playoff game with Daniel Penny's at quarterback. I trust him to win with any quarterback that he picks, rather it be trading up for Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders falling in his lap. Shedeur has the safest draft risk in terms of if you know you're going to get a quarterback that is going to be good enough to be a starter for you over the next decade. That's what you're getting in Shedeur.